These are the answers to the January 2016 Algebra Regents exam multiple choice. In question number 1, in the function f of x equals, remember that just means y equals, x minus 2 squared plus 4, the minimum value occurs when x equals what? All that I would do in this one is type it into your y equals and hit graph. Remember that your minimum is really the vertex, which can either be your min or your max. This time it happens to be a min right here. So we would go over to an x value of 2 for x. So that would be choice number 2. In question number 2, which statement can be justified by using the graph? Well, when you take a look at the graph, I can see that there's a clear point right here and a clear point right here. This one is at 4 gallons. It costs $15. This one is 8 gallons, costs $30. So if you're trying to find the price per gallon, you're going to divide the price divided by the number of gallons to figure out how much it would be per gallon. So choice number 2 ends up being correct. For every gallon of gas, $3.75 was paid. $15 for 4 gallons equals $3.75 a gallon, and $45 for 12. All right, if we look at this dot, 45 for 12 is $3.75. If we did this one, 30 divided by 8 would also be $3.75. So all of them end up being for our $3.75 a gallon, which is choice number 2. In question number 3, for a recently released movie, the function y equals blah, blah, blah models the revenue earned in millions of dollars each week for several weeks. Based on the equation, how much more money in millions of dollars was earned for revenue for week 3 than for week 5? So what I would do in this one is type this equation into my y equals, and then look at the table, second in table, look at your values for x equals 3 and x equals 5. For x equals 3 and 5, we have these two numbers. That's how many millions of dollars. Subtract those two to get you a difference of 17.056. That's closest to choice number 3. You could also do it by hand by subbing in a 3 in for your x and a 5 in for your x, and then subtracting those two values. It's just easier to use the table. In question number 4, given the following expressions, you have 4 different things here. You need to type them into the calculator. You want to know which one represents an irrational number. Remember, an irrational number is a big, long, ugly decimal, non-terminating, so it never stops. It ends in ... and it's non-repeating. So when you type these into the calculator, for number 1, we get negative 0.025. That's a terminating decimal. It stops after the 5, so that is rational. When we type in answer number 3, we get radical 25, which radical 25 is just equal to 5. That's rational because a whole number is rational. In answer number 2, we get this big, long, ugly decimal, doesn't terminate, doesn't repeat. So that is an irrational number. Also, you know that it's irrational because you have a rational plus an irrational. Anytime that you have a rational plus an irrational, it's going to give you another irrational number. And then in choice number 4, we really have 3 times 7 or 3 times negative 7 equals 21 or negative 21. So 21 is a whole number that is rational as well. So the only one that is irrational is this one, choice number 2, which would be multiple choice answer number 1. In question number 5, so which inequality is represented by the graph below? So you can see that all of them start with y equals. We have 2 of them that are less than or equal to. We have 1 of them that is greater than or 2 of them that are greater than or equal to. So I can see that this is being shaded above the line. Since it's above the line, it has to be greater than or equal to. So therefore, I know choice 1 and choice 3 are wrong. When we take a look at choices 2 and 4, you notice that you have different y-intercepts. You have a -3 and a +2. The y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. The line crosses the y-axis at -3, which is this number right here. What is the 2? The 2 is the slope. All right. How do you get from dot to dot to dot? So how do we get from the y-intercept? I can see that the line crosses the background grid here and here and here. What you're really doing is you're going up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, which that would be your slope of your line. This -3 would be -3 over 1. That would mean our graph is going down 3 over 1, not up 3 over 1. And this would mean 2 over 1 or just 2. In question number 6, you want to rearrange the formula to get R equals. So in order to get this R all by itself, this is really P times R times T. The opposite of multiplying is to divide. So I want to get, in order to get this R all by itself, I'm going to divide by P times T and P times T. So divide those, these cancel out, the T's cancel out. You're just left with I divided by PT, which is choice number 3. You could have divided them separately, all right? We could have divided by P on both sides and then divided by T on both sides, but that method is not one of the choices. In question number 7, which equation is equivalent? Which equation is equivalent to this? I would try and get the y all by itself. So add 34 and add 34. So this is my equation. I'm going to type that into my y equals and then see which graph matches it. All right. Remember, equivalent just means equal to. So I want to know which graph equals that one. Just find the match. It happens to be answer number 4. In question number 8, the equation blah, 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 blah is used to calculate the amount of money in a savings account. What does the 1.02 represent? Well, anytime that a number in those parentheses is bigger than 1, that's going to indicate growth. What percent growth? It's going to be 2%. Remember, this number inside the parentheses, you would have to move to make it into a decimal. You have to move the decimal point 2 places over to the left. So to make it back into a percent, you would move it 2 places over to the right. So that would really be a 2% growth. If it was a minus, so growth is always going to represent a number that's bigger than 1. Decay, or going down, decreasing, depreciating, would always be 1 minus the number. So you could have a number that starts off with 0 point. If it was a 2% decay, we would really have a decimal of 0.98 inside of there. 1.02 is really 1 plus 2%. 0.98 is really 1 minus 2%. In question number 9, zeros mean x-intercepts, which means your solutions. Type this equation into your y equals and see where they cross the x-intercept. Your x-intercepts are here and here. It crosses at -1 and +3. In question number 10, this is being subtracted from this. Now be careful, subtracted from means that this goes first and then minus that. Well, in order to do this problem, you have to do FOIL first to this binomial. 2x minus 3 times 2x minus 3. Firsts, outers, inners, last. Add together your outers and your inners. -6x plus -6x is -12x. So this is what we got from this part. Now, this answer is being subtracted from the 5x squared. So I wrote in blue here, 5x squared minus that whole thing. Remember, you want to line them up in a subtraction question. You want to change your minus sign to a plus sign and then change all the signs in that second term. So we want to change the 4x squared to a -4x squared, the -12x to a +12x, and the +9 to a -9. And then we want to add. So we add going down. We end up with 1x squared plus 12x minus 9, which is choice number 3. In question number 12, Joe has a rectangular patio that measures 10 feet by 12 feet. He wants to increase the area by 50% and plans to increase each dimension by an equal number of lengths, x. Which equation could be used to determine x? So the two measurements of the rectangle, and in order to find the area, they just expect you to know that you would have to multiply the two things together, length times width, or base times height for a rectangle. So we have 10 plus whatever it is that you're adding on, times 12 plus whatever you want adding on. And now here's the tricky part. You need to figure out, notice choices 1 and 2 are the same except for the total area at the end. Well, you have to multiply the 10 times 12 first to give you a square footage of total area of 120. But then he says that he wants to increase it by 50%. So 120 times 50%, that would indicate a 60-foot increase. You then have to add that to the 120 to give you your 180, which would be choice number 2. In question number 12, again, this is just a reverse FOIL question. There's 2 different ways that you could do it. You could do reverse FOIL. So I would factor out the greatest common factor first, because when you do reverse FOIL, you can't have an x to the 3rd power, but you can take an x out of each term. So that x would go outside and this trinomial would be left inside. Now you're doing reverse FOIL. What times what is negative 30? That adds up to negative 13. It'd be negative 15 times 2. And you would get this as your answer, which is choice 3. Totally different way to do it would be to multiply 2 terms together. You could do FOIL first and then multiply everything by x. Or you could multiply these first 2 terms together, and then whatever you get for that answer, multiply it by that 3rd term, and you would get that. In question number 13, the greatest average rate. All right. So this one is a lot of work for a multiple choice question. Remember, anytime that you're doing the rate of change, you have to use that rate of change formula. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. That's just the formula that they expect you to know and memorize. So when we go through and do this, 1898, for example, to 1971, we would use this one and this one. All points are written X comma Y. This is your first point, so these get 1s. Your second point, they get 2s. Sub the numbers into the formula, divide that fraction in the end, top divided by bottom, you get this as your rate. You do the same thing for each of the other ones. Choice number 4 here in the orange ends up being the correct answer because 1.8 is bigger than 0.4, 0.06, and 0.5 because you're looking for the greatest, which would be your biggest number. In question number 14, you have to use completing the square. Remember, completing the square means take half of your b value and square it, and then you add it to both sides. So when we have this trinomial, first of all, we got to get this 7 to the other side. Then we take half of our b value, half of negative 8 is negative 4, square it. Negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. And then we want to add it back to both sides. Plus 16 plus 16. Do reverse FOIL right here. What times what is 16? That adds up to negative 8. It's really x minus 4 and x minus. So we get down to this trinomial. What times what is 16? That adds up to negative 8. It would be x minus 4 times x minus 4. We can write it like this, which exactly matches this step in the process. You didn't have to finish solving it. It was just asking for which of these is a step in the process. In question number 15, a construction company uses this function, f of p. So that's really f of x, where p is the number of people working on a project. A reasonable domain means your x values. Remember, range means your y values for that number of people. Well, people can only be positive. So you could get rid of choices 3 and 4 right away because those represent negative numbers. You can't have negative people. It wouldn't be real numbers because you can't have a partial person. All right. So it can only be positive integers because those are positive whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In question number 16, which function is shown in the table? I would just type these into your y equals and see which table matches this table. All right. Do second and table and figure out which table matches that. There are other ways that you could do this. You could type these into your L1 and L2, do second and stat plots and see what the graph looks like, and then go through and graph these as well and see which one matches. That's another way to do it. Or you could take these x values, sub them all in for the x's, which I wouldn't do, it would take forever, and make sure that you get all those correct answers. In question number 17, given these two functions, which value of x makes them equal to each other? Well, when we're talking about two functions and where they're equal to each other, we want to know the intersection point. That's what makes them equal to each other. So if I graph the one and I graph the other, I get this picture. So they cross here and here. What value of x's are they at? It's at -2, and it's at +6. -2 is the only answer that's here. The +6 is not. In question number 18, which recursively defined function represents the sequence 3, 7, 15, 31? So we have to figure out by subbing in which one is the correct answer. So I'm going to take my f of 1 equals 3. That's going to be the first term. All right, so I have 3 as my first term. All of them have 3 as the first term, so that doesn't really get us anywhere. And then this is just trial and error. All right, this is the work that you would have to do to check all the answers for choice 3, which is the correct one. I would then take for my second term, my 2. All right, I would take the 2 and sub it in for n. All right, when I go and sub in the 2 for n, I would have the f of n plus f of 2 plus 1 instead of n plus 1. 2 plus 1 is 3, so my f of 3, all right, my f of 3 would equal 2 times the f of n, or the f of 2, plus 1. So 2 times 7 plus 1, 15 equals 15. It checks. Do the same thing for 1, 2, and 3 to find those different terms in the sequence. It's just trial and error. You got to see which ones check. In question number 19, the range of the function is defined as this. Remember, range is your y values. When I take a look at my y values here, I want all of them from here going up. All right, all of them from here going up. That's going to be all the terms that are bigger than y equals 0. It would not be equal to it because it does not touch the x-intercept. In question number 20, the graph of this is shown. What if you add 1 to just the x and subtract 2 from the whole thing? What are you doing? Well, adding 1 just to the x is going left 1, and subtracting 2 from the whole thing is going down 2. So we want to know which one goes left 1 and down 2. So when you take a look at this graph and this graph, from this graph to this graph, it's going left 1 and down 2. If you didn't know what was going on there, you could just pick arbitrarily 2 graphs like y equals x squared and then that one, and figure out how it moves. In question number 21, which pair of equations could not be used to solve the following for x and y? When you take a look at these, you need to figure out which one is equal to it. There's several different ways to do it. You could rearrange for y equals and graph them and look and see what the graphs, which one's graphs. In question number 1, all of these, both of these equations are just being multiplied by -1. All right, this equation is being multiplied by -1. This one's being multiplied by 3 and -3. This one is being multiplied by 2. All right, this one, when they go to multiply, how do you get from -2 to -8? You're multiplying by 4. But notice that in this very last part, this number stayed the same. So that one is going to be the one that doesn't work. All the other ones are equivalent to it because we're just multiplying that whole equation by a number. In question number 22, which function has a minimum that is less than the one shown in the graph? So the one shown in the graph, the minimum is this point right here, which is the lowest value, which is -7. -7 is your min. So take and type these into your y equals. The min for number 1 is -2. The min for 2 is -6, -4, and 2. -4 is less than, all right, -7, or sorry, -11. That's not -4. It's -11 is less than -7. So that would be your lower one. In question number 23, which statement describes a situation with an equal difference over an interval of time? An equal difference means adding or subtracting by the same number each time. In choice number 1, it says a sunflower grows at a rate of 3.5 centimeters per day. That means every day it's growing by 3.5. So you're adding 3.5 every time. In choice number 2, you're multiplying by 85.85 because you're depreciating at 15% each time. So those are going to produce different numbers each time. And then this one, it says that it triples, being multiplied by 3 each time. An equal difference is adding or subtracting by the same amount each day. So that's choice number 1. And then we have question number 24. Which scatter plot indicates the best linear fit? All right. When you have these residual plots, all right, A residual plot that forms a straight line is just a random pattern. It's a random pattern that's above or below. This U-shaped pattern is not going to create a straight line. This up and then down, that's going to be not a linear. Same thing. This is a U-shape. The linear is a random pattern above and below that x-axis. You can take a look at your multiple choice and see where you fall. Remember that we really want to get a 65. A 65 on this particular exam is 30 credits.